Hi, my name is Yulia Repina, and I'm the lead of the design team. I'm sure that designers must be enthusiastic. They must be carried away by different things which are sometimes completely unrelated to their professional activities. In our work, it's often difficult to trace where ideas come from. Sometimes things which seem irrelevant lead you to the design solution. It can be music, painting, architecture, exhibitions, nature, almost anything. It's not enough just to be a professional in a narrow field. You should always stay aware of what is happening around. You should be in context. This is very true about my fellow designers at JetBrains. They have a wide range of interests within and outside of the professional field. Today, I want to tell you how things work in my case, how ideas from non-JetBrains life sometimes affect my design solution. As some of you may know, I'm not only a designer, but also an artist, a sculptor. It's tricky, but sometimes I manage to combine my two storylines, JetBrains and ceramic sculpture. Today, I will tell you about these intersections, my ceramic sculptural projects related to JetBrains. Let's start with what I do when I am not in the office. I spend almost all my free time doing sculpture, working in the studio or traveling somewhere to sculpt. Later, I'll show you some of my recent works. I will explain what exactly I do and what topics matter for me. Also, I hope to show how the theme can follow you from one work to another. And this slide shows a detail of my large piece. I made it about 4 years ago, and with this work, I returned to the portrait theme. For me, an internal emotional completeness in a simple shape is a point here. I created this piece for a summer exhibition last year. It is an annual exhibition and it takes place in Yulia Park every June for more than 10 years already. This piece belongs to a series that I call flyers. The flyers come large and small. They sit, they fly, they even swim. When I was making this group of flyers, I was going to fix them on vertical metal rods. But at the very last moment, I had to replace the metal with bamboo. The result was unexpected. They swayed expressively and gently in the wind. They were almost flying. One flyer nearly fell to the ground, but managed. When I was working on this group, I used my favorite technique. It is about pressing clay into a plaster mold. First, I created a model from sculptural plasticine and then made them plaster mold from it. In fact, there are 6 molds for the body parts: arms, legs, head, and torso. I press clay into molds and join parts together. At this stage, I can change poses if necessary, or I can add hand-built details. So from one form, I can get completely different characters. This one is also a flyer, and it is the largest of them, about a meter long. For me, the flyers symbolize the combination of strength and weakness in a person. On one hand, the flyers have grand plans. They want to implement them. But on the other hand, they're afraid of the unknown and they lack confidence. Usually, flyers don't have clothes on, except for some items necessary for flying. Can be a helmet, glasses, or socks sometimes, to keep their feet warm in the air. Their small wings are a symbol of strength and weakness at the same time. Now there is a group of plump ladies practicing yoga. They represent one of my favorite themes. I like to play with the simple, robust shapes, and through this playing to achieve emotional expressiveness. I often use rhythmic repetition, and I think it's vital not to be too boring and too serious about myself and my work. This head is a part of the 3 masks work. It is a large sculpture group about 50 centimeters tall. It participated 2 years ago in another exhibition on Yulia Island. In this work, I play with feeling of light movement. Look at this face with 2 pairs of eyes. What do you feel? As for me, I am fascinated by the sensation of movement, both in my mind and on the face. And also, I often use this classic acanthus ornament in my works. The second head from 3 masks. The mask theme appears here as palms covering the face. The character either tries to protect itself or pretends to be someone else. I finished this work back in St. Petersburg right before the quarantine. In a way, it was the start for the next project. I did it later in Munich when I was sitting alone at home. As the first sculptural project related to JetBrains, I must mention my JetBrains vacations. All my holiday time I spent on trips. Sometimes I go to pretty remote locations. The purpose of these vacations is work, but a different kind of it, sculptural. I have to say that artists have a fantastic format of communication, Symposia. It's an event when a group of artists from different countries get together, usually for 2-3 weeks. They work, hold workshops, they talk about their work, give presentations, and do some other things. I made this piece called Watching You 2 years ago in Thailand. It was a large sculpture symposium organized by a university on one of its campuses. When we make sculptures during the symposiums, they were later installed along their central alley. The theme of my piece is once again portrait, but this time I added separately installed hands. This is the first time I used the repetitive striped pattern. I like to see how the motif unifies or deforms the shape. From time to time, the theme of hands appears in my pieces. On my first trip to India, I was fascinated by the well-known hands sculpture in the Delhi airport. This theme is endless in sculpture. Hands are both symbolic and without much meaning expressive in shape. And hands can express emotions just as well as faces. At that Indian symposium, I sculpted separate hands for the first time. This piece is Who Am I from last year. I made it in Latvia at the amazing venue of the Mark Rothko Art Center. In this work, I used some of my frequent and favorite motifs: 4 eyes on the face, acanthus and striped ornaments. The objects were fried in a wood-fired kiln at a very high temperature. And at the last stage of firing, we threw salt and copper sulfate into the kiln. This always gives unpredictable and sometimes remarkable effects. This self-portrait in blue was also created in Latvia. These 2 large pieces I made in 2 different countries, Romania and Thailand. Both belong to the Flyer series. They are always in doubt, not believing in themselves. One flyer wonders whether flying is a good idea. Another one is chatting with air traffic control about the flight conditions. He's trying to come up with an excuse not to go up in the sky. This here is a 5-part piece from a year ago in Romania. I enjoy coming to a new location for a symposium and doing something not pre-planned. I like to make spontaneous works inspired by the circumstances. Sometimes the place itself, the situation, or even objects that I find become my work background. At that time, we needed a rather large sculpture for the garden. Children often visit this place. In the garden, I spotted a red bench. It was roughly assembled, and I used it for my sculpture, Panda Riders. They're on their way, and the path is dangerous and unpredictable. But they have each other, and this gives strength and hope. This one is from the symposium trip to China last December. The piece was also an improvisation. I visit China quite often and truly enjoy being there. I think this country is incredibly diverse and full of contradictions. But one of the things that traumatized me is their attitude to living things, pragmatic and utilitarian. You can notice this almost everywhere. I made this piece under the influence of those hard impressions. Now, about how I first came up with an idea for an office exhibition. At that time, we just moved to the university office. The reason why I began to think about the exhibition was a wonderful open roof terrace in the office. Just imagine the lovely scenery all around right in the city center and constantly changing sky overhead. Isn't it perfect? At first, it was just a beautiful abstract idea, but then I thought, why not? I asked my colleagues, and it turned out that everything was possible. It happened only thanks to people who helped me at the time. During the short period which I spent at the beginning of summer in St. Petersburg, we had enough time to think over all the details and to prepare everything. Of course, for all the participants, this was additional work, but everything was moving. And of course, the lack of a roof and our unpredictable St. Petersburg weather was scary. I closely followed the forecasts. I dreamed of opening the exhibition on a warm, sunny evening and hoped that it would turn into a clear white night. But it rained. The musician had to set up an umbrella. The guests were with umbrellas. A small buffet cooked by our fantastic chefs took place in the rain. But this warm rain created a unique, soft and mystic atmosphere. Maybe some of you remember this nice rainy evening. The swimmers swam in the rain. One more swimmer. Here are some other works from that exhibition. Here is a series of hands again. These were based on my fresh impressions from India. And one more shot from that exhibition. The next ceramic project for JetBrains is a collection of prizes for colleagues. We had a list of our unofficial nominations. You can see them on the slide. And so it happened that my colleagues turned to me for help. They asked me to choose the prizes for 8 winners. But I thought that I could make them myself. When you need a small edition of prizes sculptures, the technique that I often use and love, and which I have already mentioned today, is very suitable, working with a plaster mold. It was a long project. I worked on it for about 5 months. But there were so many aspects that I loved. The portrait theme, the ability to get completely different images within the same mold, and the desire to make small gifts for colleagues. All these things have developed into a fun project. These are the remains of the plasticine model that I molded them. This is the mold taken from the model on the previous slide. It is easy to work with, and I still use it for the other works. I will talk about this a bit later. Now I'll show you some items from that collection. That special something nomination. I don't think that I need to tell you about my association or how I decided to assign those nominations, because this interpretation can be completely different. Everyone can have their own. The know-it-all nomination. The whatever it takes nomination. And the drop the bomb nomination. The next year, we repeated the New Year project, but this time with other nominations and other sculptures. On the slide, you can see 8 nominations from this year. This time, I try to express the idea of giving with the help of the image of hands. Hands holding small funny objects. Hands either accept them or, on the contrary, give them. They offer to consider what they are carrying or just hold the objects with care. Again, I was working with a plaster mold, but this time the shape was more complicated. I sculpted a hand frozen in one gesture, but then I made the separate molds of the palms and fingers. With these molds, I could freely design different gestures. In addition to the hands, I made cute little objects from another material, porcelain. On each of 8 items, I drew in gold symbols of its nomination. This here is the crafty spirit nomination. Here is the inspiration nomination. The life of the party. The globetrotter. And the walk life ninja. The next part is devoted to the not yet completed project. I hope that in the near future we will open an exhibition in our new office in Munich, and then I'll give you an idea of the whole project. This started for me with the beginning of a quarantine and self-isolation at home. I tried to fill the void from all the cancelled trips and symposia and exhibitions. So I began to sculpt and collect my constant research on new topics into one story. And at the same time, I decided to work closely with a different but beautiful material, porcelain. The plaster mold is the same as for the first awards project. Only this time, there is a lot more additional work. One by one, I met a series of sculptures. In each of these series, I have been developing a new plastic and semantic theme. In general, all these 10 themes speak about my inner state, fears, memories. Also, they're about my attitude towards many problems that concern me and maybe are familiar to many people. For example, I thought about the internal conflict between the victim and aggressor in each of us, our attempts to destroy the cage that we've built ourselves and that limits us both inside and out. Or about sometimes unconscious, sometimes conscious ignorance, about unwillingness to know, notice, hear something, and the vulnerability associated with it. In each next series, I try to find a new plastic expressiveness. And it also let me play with various allusions. Now, the turn has come to the last topic of this story, and this is the entirely different type of work. This project is still in progress too, but I want to talk about it now. As you know, a new product is being developed in JetBrains fleet. At some point, Anton Sokolov contacted me. It was a request to build an identity, a logo, and an icon for it. These are the conditions defined for the new logo. It is a new IDE. It should be visually connected with JetBrains. The name could be changed, but the fleet meaning and emotion should remain. Should be visually space connected. Should be somehow clear that it can work without space. Potentially some following products for different professionals appear. JetBrains IDE will remain and will be connected to space, but not in the same way as fleet. And first we need favicon and docicon. On this slide, you see the current trends in logo and icon design. The intersection with our design are highlighted in green. You can easily see that our logos in principle exist in the field of current trends. What I would like to add to our identity is our own expressive font and 3D motion version of the logos. From the very beginning, I considered two main ideas. On this slide, you can see a couple of references to each of them. The first idea refers to the clear fleet metaphor, a group of flying, moving objects. The second idea refers to 3D color polygons collection. Here is an initial sketch of the first theme. Here you can see a draft design for the second direction. We decided that for the initial discussion with the team, it's better to present this second theme. I worked a bit more on it, collected references, defined metaphors, then prepared a presentation with an explanation of the idea and its meaning. Unfortunately, the proposal was not accepted, and we had to look for new solutions. When I calmed down, I decided to try to build these objects, logos, myself, with my hands. I had to get the real 3D idea of the shape. I wanted to find simple but expressive abstract forms. These things on the slide are the main references for this work. Here is a small collection that I got. At that time, I was working with porcelain for the project that I mentioned already. So this porcelain turned out to be the most suitable material. Then it comes to small objects. Working with porcelain is very easy and enjoyable. You don't have to struggle with the material. You can just work, have fun, and come up with new shapes. I got 13 small objects. They are very pleasant, tangible, and expressive from different angles. Here is a photo of one of the models. Next to the photo, I placed a vector outline sketch of the model to show its construction. This is a vector drawing of a model in Illustrator, the same model from different angles. And here is an animated model of the object. A photo of the next model and an outline scheme, a vector drawing, the same model from different angles, an animated model of the object. Here is a photo of another one and its outline scheme. A vector drawing of the model. An animated model. Next photo and outline scheme. Its vector drawing. An animated model. On this slide you can see one of my favorite shapes and its vector drawing. So created physical models of the possible logos let me feel and understand their objectivity. This pushed me to the next step. I decided to play with the logos of our products to turn them into 3D signs. The slide shows two 3D beams for our logos. And this slide shows two logos in their 3D state. So I can say that while I was working on the Fleet logo, I combined two completely different parts of my professional life in one project. As a part of work on a graphic design, sculptural work showed me how directly one affects another. I was literally able to touch the logo. At this point, I want to stop. I wanted to tell you a story about how I discovered the opportunity to combine two parts of my life that I thought were incompatible. I hope I succeeded, and I also hope that this story was interesting to you. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them.